Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Search Engine Journal webinar. Today, we're going to be joined by Paxton Gray from 97th Floor, and he's going to be talking about a really interesting topic. It's going to be 5 secrets to getting the most out of agencies and how to avoid getting burned. I mean, there's a lot of times when you're either partnering with, hiring, or even, you might be an agency yourself and you're just looking at better ways to interact with your customers. He's going to run through a lot of really great tips on all of that, and it's going to be a really, really interesting presentation. Obviously, as always, I get to see it in advance, and I was impressed with it, and so I think you will be as well. If you're wondering who I am, my name is Brent Satoris, and I'll be moderating today. I'm going to take a quick break and let Paxton introduce himself before I dive into some housekeeping points.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Paxton Gray. I am the CEO of 97th Floor. We are a 100-person agency based near Salt Lake City, and I have been working in agencies for 13 years now. So yeah, I put a lot of thought into the agency relationship model.
Beautiful. Housekeeping points, I'll try to keep it brief. If you have any questions, comments, or anything you'd like to share or discuss, there is an option within webinar to chat and add your questions down in the bottom of your sidebar view. So if you want to do that, please do that. We will be doing a Q&A at the end of the presentation. So as the presentation is going, toss all your questions in there, and we will make sure that those get filtered out. We'll organize them, and we'll make sure we get all those answered at the end of the presentation. There will be a couple polls throughout the webinar that we ask you to take a moment to answer. It's an opportunity for you to participate, and it also provides information that can help Paxton kind of elaborate in different areas as he continues on with the presentation. So if you can take just a moment to participate now, it would be great. We're going to do our best throughout the webinar. If there's any resources, if we mention any tools in the articles, we'll do our best to try to link those in the chat. If we miss something, please ask it, and we will make sure we get it for you. After the webinar is over, we have like a really quick, it's just like about a 5-minute survey. I just want to again ask everybody to participate if you can. We really use that information to improve the webinars, and we really take a lot of time to kind of look at everybody's points of views and try to balance them. So if you can take the time to give us your feedback, it will only help us make this whole thing better for you and everybody else. Lastly, the entire webinar is being recorded and will be made available through a recap post on Search Engine Journal. I think you'll get contacted through an email as well. And without any further delays, let's dive into the webinar. Paxton, take us away.
All right. Well, first, thanks to Search Engine Journal for conducting this webinar. I'm excited to talk about this with you. The agency model is a complex one, and I'm not going to be able to cover 100% of all the variables here today, but my goal is to help you get the most out of your agency as you build those relationships and build your marketing teams and plans. So like I said, I'm Paxton Gray, CEO of 97th Floor. Connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. And 97th Floor, a little bit about us. We work with a lot of enterprise and mid-market companies in the tech SaaS space, B2B, as well as e-commerce and consumer packaged goods. So if you're mid-market, enterprise in one of those industries, we'd love to talk with you. And what we do for these companies is SEO and digital advertising, content creative, as well as conversion rate optimization. We feel like these four all mix really well together and to build cohesive digital marketing strategies. So what we're going to cover today, the pain points we're going to address is number one, how can you be sure that you're hiring the right agency? Often hiring an agency is a big commitment. You're expending a lot of resources. Often you're signing a contract and committing to a certain time period. And so ensuring that you're hiring the right agency is key. You also want to make sure that your agency is going to be taking work off your plate. Oftentimes agencies will add work to your plate and make things more difficult, which is definitely not the desired outcome. And then how will you ensure that your agency can actually do and will do what they say they can and will do? So these are the pain points that we're attempting to address today. But first, we're going to go into a quick poll.
Awesome. So I'll go ahead and get that launched up for us. And again, just to ask everyone to take a quick moment to participate. What has been your experience with working with marketing agencies? Number one, I haven't worked with any agencies. I've had pretty bad experiences in the past. Good, not great. I'm open to suggestions. Excellent. I love working with agencies. Or lastly, you happen to work at an agency yourself. So again, I'll take a moment and let everybody have an opportunity to kind of, participate in the poll. I can see the numbers. I can see how many people are voting. So once we have a statistical relevance or enough people, I'll go ahead and stop it. So I'll give everybody about another 10, 15 seconds, and then we'll go ahead and pause that out and let you see the results. All right, so sharing the results, a pretty good mix. I mean, a lot of people, surprisingly, a lot of people here from agencies, which I think is awesome because anytime an agency can improve, kind of how they work with their customers, our whole industry just benefits so much. So I'm really kind of happy to see that demographic kind of showing up here today.
That's awesome. Hello, agencies. Hopefully this is helpful for you too. So when we talk about working with an agency, we can measure success based off of kind of return on agency spend as opposed to return on ad spend. And really that's a simple equation, which is the value that the agency brings minus the costs that the agency incurs. And so when we talk about value, obviously the results, are they generating MQLs? Are they increasing my revenue? Are they helping me do the thing that I want to do, right? But then beyond that, there's more value that an agency can and should be bringing to the table. Are they innovating? Are they pushing my marketing strategy forward? Are they helping make a positive impact across my organization? Their capability. As an agency deepens their capability and widens their capability, the value to the agency increases, often in a decrease of time and effort from the brand side. And then on the cost, there's obviously the agency fee, which is the cost that everyone is aware of and thinks about. But beyond that, there are additional costs that people don't often think about, which is time. How much time are they going to take for me to work with? Do you have to stay on top of your agency regularly? Do you have to micromanage them? Or can you trust that they're going to do the work that they say they're going to do? And how complex is the integration with that agency, with your organization? And that may not be a fault of the agency, just the situation. And that's a cost, though, that you need to consider as you make an investment into an agency. So the key in improving return on agency spend would be increasing the value they provide and decreasing the costs that they incur. So how do you do that? Tip number one, make sure that your goal and your statement of work are in alignment. So you need to be very clear about what you want. How do you do that? Well, deliverable and goal-based or hourly contracts, really most SCWs should be organized in one of these three ways. We have a whole chart that we put together for you as a resource that you can use. I'm not going to walk through each one of these points. My favorite are goal-based contracts because it allows the agency to have more skin in the game. It allows them to employ more levers which they can pull to achieve the desired outcome. And it incentivizes the agency to be more involved with your strategy, which is what you want typically from a partnership with an agency. And in my opinion, it has a higher chance of success for the organization over deliverable based or hourly based. But there's benefits and pros and cons to all of them. We've broken that out in depth in a guide, Agency Success Playbook. If you want access to this, just connect with me on LinkedIn, just search Paxton Gray, send me a message, say, hey, I want the guide that you guys produced. I'll give you a link where you can download it. So what happens, this is a question you should be asking your agency. What happens if the KPIs or key performance indicators are not met? That's something that sometimes goes unasked, which is great. We've established the KPIs, we've established the goals. What happens if we don't hit our goals? This is where the performance-based statement of work comes into play, which is one of my favorites. A performance-based statement of work, in my opinion, the optimal way to build that is to say a percentage of refund based off of percentage of goal complete. So what that looks like here is you need caps on both ends, and this prevents you from paying out a lot of money that you're not prepared to pay if your agency just completely smashes the goal. And ideally, that contract is focused on one main KPI. You can have other KPIs, but the percentage is based off of one main KPI. And that should be as closely tied to revenue as possible. You want to make sure that if you are issuing a bonus to your agency because they totally destroyed their goal and what you were hoping to achieve, that your company made a lot of money because they destroyed their goal. And vice versa is true as well if they're issuing you a refund. So that's the ideal way to structure contracts and statements of work, is ensuring that their KPIs are as tightly tied to your revenue as possible, and that they have skin in the game to make sure that they're going to hit your company's goals in the best way possible. Number two, know exactly what you need. This is really hard. and there's a lot of things that go overlooked in that agency search and vetting process. But before you even start that, you need to know what it is you want. Celebrity Cruises, they did a fantastic job of this. They took the time to sit down and build out their marketing plan, understand their goals, and know exactly what they expected from an agency. That made their search process really simple. All agencies needed to do at that point is to see, here's where they expect us to fit in. What ideas are we going to bring to the table to make sure that we fit in with their goals and ideas? And that made their process of onboarding super easy. We've been working with them for over 2 years now, and it's just a tight, super great partnership. But it's owed largely thanks to their diligence in knowing what they wanted before they sought out agencies. So how do you do that? Here are the questions that you should be asking yourself before you search. What is your company goal? A lot of people don't know that, surprisingly. What is your marketing goal, and what are your channel goals? How do you expect an agency to fit into your channel, marketing, and company goals? Like, what do you hope to achieve? That's not to say any of this can change, like can't change, and it probably should, but you should have an idea of what you're hoping for as you go out into that search process. Number two, KPIs. How are you going to measure whether or not the agency is doing what they're supposed to be doing? What numbers will have to go up for you to know that things are going well? And what are the baselines for those numbers? You can't really measure performance, no matter the KPI, if you don't have a baseline. Simply going up doesn't necessarily mean that things are going as well as they could. You need to know what's the historic performance for that KPI before you engage. And then relationship, how do you expect to communicate? Are you hoping to work with this agency weekly, communicate with them weekly, daily? Or are you hoping to text and phone call whenever you want? Are you hoping to do Slack? Or do you not want to meet at all? You just want them to take care of it and not really bother you? All of those are fine. You just need to know what you want going into it and make sure that that agency is on the same page as you as far as your expectation goes. Same thing with reporting. Are you fine with templated reports? Are you fine with just email updates? Do you want reports that are so custom that you could just copy and paste your slides into the deck that you're going to take and report to corporate? And then same thing, what you expect, how you expect the work to go. Are you looking for foot soldiers? People, like, you've got your strategy, you know exactly what you want, you just want people to execute. That's fine. Or do you want strategists? Do you want people who are going to, give feedback into the overall strategy and take a bigger picture of your marketing plan? Any of those are fine, or some combination in between. You just need to know what it is you hope to see and make that clear in your search process, and be looking for an agency that can do what it is you're expecting they can do. So here's some questions you can ask in your vetting process. Number one, how long have you been in business? There are so many agencies out there, and lots of agencies on this call listening. There are a lot of good agencies, there are a lot of bad agencies. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to minimize risk and increase the likelihood of success here. So I would recommend that you look for an agency that's been around for at least 5 years. There's good agencies probably that have been around less than that, but to decrease risk, I would recommend looking for an agency that's over 5 years old. How many people are going to be working on my account, and who will be working on my account? It's perfectly appropriate to ask this question. You can even ask for LinkedIn profiles of the people, the team that will be working on your account, to see if these are the people you want to be working with. Are you fine if the agency uses virtual assistants overseas to do that? That's okay if it's what you want. Or do you prefer to have in-house employees working on your account? You just need to know that, and you should ask those questions. You should ask, what makes your agency different? If the agency doesn't have a good answer to this, if they don't know the unique thing they're bringing to the table, I would move on to another agency. How will you help us achieve our goals, and why do you recommend this strategy? Any agency you're talking to in the vetting process should be able to present a custom tailored strategy for you to achieve your goals, not a set package, a random rote thing. It should be custom to you, and they should be able to explain why that strategy is going to be beneficial for you. If you're getting something that's just cookie cutter, normal templated stuff, move on. Find another agency that is going to put forth the effort into building something that's going to help you succeed. How is that work going to be executed? You should know what's going to be happening in the first week, the first month, the first quarter, the first year, and know what those deadlines are and the expectations are moving into it. Ask for references. This is something surprisingly people don't do too often. The more you're investing, the more I would make sure that you're decreasing risk by asking for references of people that have actually worked with that agency before. And I would actually use references as my search process. Don't go to Google, don't just search like marketing agency. Ask people that you trust who they've used and who they've had good experiences before. That's going to give you way better output than just going to Google. What to look for? Look for companies that have happy employees and solid culture. The way they treat their employees matters a lot to whether or not they're going to be successful for you long term. Look for a company that has a much larger fulfillment team than a sales team. Like you want a company that has 15 to 1 or 20 to 1 employees for a sales team. This is a better way to understand a company's retention than just asking them a retention rate. Having a large fulfillment team obviously is very expensive and requires that they retain clients at a good clip. If they have a much larger sales team than a fulfillment team, that indicates often, not always, but often, that they have a really bad churn rate and they're focused on just filling the funnel to keep the thing going. And the last, and it's kind of obvious, look for an agency that's honest and that's competent in what they do, as demonstrated by case studies. Again, I have a lot more details in this. Just hit me up on LinkedIn and I'll give you a link where you can download Agency Success Playbook that has a lot more detail, dives into what I'm talking about. Number 3, I love this point so much. Make them believers. Turn your agency into believers of you, your company, your product. Because believers go the extra mile. This gets you such a slamming deal if you can turn them into believers. Oats Overnight, love this company. They are fantastic at turning their agency into believers. So how do they do that? Well, first, give the team space to learn about your company. Often as soon as you onboard, that agency is gonna wanna get right to work and just start doing what they know how to do, right? But make sure that they take the time to slow down first and learn about your company. Who are you? Where have you been? What's the story of the founder? What challenges have you faced in the past? What's unique about your product? What are some of the cool things about your organization? You don't want your agency feeling like you are just some other generic SaaS company, some other generic e-commerce company, or whatever, right? They need to know you and start to develop that relationship with you and your organization. That's going to get much better work out of them. Introduce them to people that they won't be working with directly. Let them know the names and the faces of people at the organization. This will help them feel like they're more of a team working with your company and will help them understand the impact that they're having on your organization, which is going to, again, turn them into believers and get more and better work out of your agency. Show them behind the scenes, show them how the sausage is made. Let them give them insight into future products that will be coming out or changes that you're planning on making in your organization. This again will give them an inside view and help them feel like they're a member of the team and get more context so that the ideas that they bring to the table will be more relevant and impactful in your organization. And then where applicable, get them to try your product or experience your service. Depending on your product, perhaps the agency should be buying a product for the team that will be working on it so they can taste it or they can try it or they can go to the place where you conduct your service. The more that you can do this, again, the more that they will form an attachment with your company and understand what your customers are experiencing and bring that to the table, to the marketing table. So how did Oats Overnight do this? They invited us to their factory when we kicked off with them. We went down to their factory, we toured it, we saw how the product was made. And my favorite part of it is that we got to see the names and the faces of the people working on the line and producing the product. And this helped us understand the impact that we are having on their organization beyond just the people that we talk to every day. And that gets a lot more of our heart put into it. And so I love this approach that Oats Overnight took. Of getting us more involved. In fact, it turned us into such believers that our employees now actually invest in the company. So they definitely understand the impact that they're having, and that gets great work out of us. So we're going to take a second here to hop into our second and final poll.
Awesome. So as you just heard, we got another poll. And again, we ask everybody just take a moment to go ahead and mark your selection. When getting external help, do you prefer to hire multi-disciplined agencies, single disciplined agencies, or consultants? So obviously the answer is there between the three: multi-disciplined agencies, single disciplined agencies, consultants. Either. I just want results. I prefer to hire employees versus external help. I guess that could also depend on what your true goal is, right? So like a link building company, I would like really like somebody who's dedicated to link building in that sense, unless it's an agency that's been doing like link building for a long time. So there's some variations in there that could happen, but answer the best that you can think of. And I'm going to go ahead and give just a couple more seconds, and we're going to go ahead and close this out because I think we have a statistical relevance at this point. So I'll share the results. Multidisciplined agencies, I think that's pretty common these days. It's hard to find really single disciplined agencies, anymore. And interesting that, either I just want results. I think that's a pretty fair statement as well. So pretty good results there.
Okay, all right, super interesting. Tip number 4, trust gets you the ultimate discount. Why does that happen? Well, when you have trust, results go up, the ego goes out the door. The agency stops just looking to protect themselves and they start looking to protect your organization, your company. The more you have that mutual trust, which causes costs to go down often. And we're not just talking financial costs, although that's included. We're talking time and integration costs. The mental investment from those employees goes up and stress levels go down. And as stress goes down, risks go up, which are good. You want your agency taking risks and bringing new things to the table. And the less stress they feel, the more they know that they can trust you with their crazy, risky ideas, the better value you're going to get from your agency. So how do you do this? Well, this idea of rising tides lift all ships, making your agency know that when we win, you guys win. The more you can communicate that, the better you will develop trust with that agency, and the more you build that into your relationship. So how do you build that mutual trust? Well, regular calls should be more organic discussions rather than formal, set, rote, cookie cutter meetings. The more you can just be open, share your concerns, the more you can share your thoughts and feelings about what's going on and what you're dealing with and how they can help you with that, the better that trust is going to be developed. Feel free to speak up when something's out of place. An agency does not want you to kind of sit on feelings that you're having that are not favorable. And oftentimes it's uncomfortable for us to share those feelings when we're talking to an agency. But the more that we can be open with agencies about what our concerns are and what is bugging us, the better they can do to address that, and the more trust they will have in you that you are speaking up and sharing your thoughts and feelings. And then allow your agency the space to provide input. Asking them for their thoughts and opinions on things, even if it's not directly tied to what they're doing, is a great way to help them feel more engaged and to show them that you trust their thought and their input, which is going to get more value for you in the long run. And this is kind of hard right now, but when it becomes more of an option, spending time in person is a fantastic way to build that trust. The more you can do it, the better. And it can be hard, again, but making time for that is super key. That's why Nice and Floor, we built Mastermind every year. We invite all our clients up to the mountains of Utah, and we go horseback riding or skiing and snowboarding. Basically, it's just to spend time together, to collaborate, and to deepen those relationships that we have so that we can produce more stellar results. Last thing is expect and foster innovation. This is so key. An agency should be bringing new ideas regularly. That is one of the biggest values of an agency. If an agency is not bringing new ideas, move on, or figure out how to get that agency to start bringing new ideas on a regular basis. It doesn't mean you have to adopt them, but they should be figuring out from all their experience, bringing new things to the table that will benefit you. So how do you foster that agency innovation? Well, it's really simple. Find an agency that knows how to do it, right? Find an agency that knows how to innovate and creates boundary pushing work. Number 2, make them aware of your whole marketing stack and everything you're working on. This gives them context to make their ideas more relevant. Make them aware of your larger goals beyond the work that they're doing, and make them aware of your personal goals as well. If they're not bringing new ideas quarterly, ask for those. Say, what else can you do? What else can you bring to the table? What else should I be doing that I'm not thinking about? And then lastly, continue to build rapport with them and get them to think about you regularly. I always think about, like, you want your agency thinking about you and your brand while they're eating their cereal in the morning. If they're thinking about you while they eat their cereal, they're going to be coming to you with new, crazy, awesome ideas on the regular. But if they're not thinking about you, if they're trying to run away from that relationship, you're not going to be getting the innovation that you should be getting from an agency. So I'm going to end on eFile Cabinet. Love this company. They've done a great job of building trust with us. They do B2B tech document management systems. They use OCR technology to deal with people with lots of paperwork. And they hired us to do SEO, but they continue to foster that trust and innovation in us. And we came up with this big campaign to do a rage cage, a mobile rage room at a conference happening for accountants, which is their target audience. And it was awesome. The accounts would sign up, get into their HubSpot. We could drip email marketing campaigns onto them. They would suit up and they just go nuts in this rage room. And I love this campaign because it had a big effect on SEO, which is what we were hired to do, but it wasn't this traditional link building, page optimization stuff. But the only reason we arrived here was because eFile Cabinet fostered that innovation, made that a safe place for our teams to come up with these cool ideas. And in case you're wondering, everything that was destroyed in that rage cage was totally recycled. It built their brand, it got more MQLs, and it achieved the ultimate goal for them, which was increasing organic traffic and sales through organic traffic. There's so much to cover in this relationship and so much more to talk about. I'd love to answer your questions here. If you want to work with Nice and Floor, if you're in the mid-market enterprise space, B2B tech, e-commerce, consumer packaged goods, go to niceandfloor.com/proposal. We'd love to put together a plan for you on how we think we can help you achieve your goals. And also, if you want access to that agency success playbook, hit me up on LinkedIn, just search Paxton Gray, send me a message, and I'll send you a link where you can download that success playbook. Thank you so much.
Beautiful, Paxton. Really good information there. I definitely am looking forward to diving into this Q&A. We have quite a bit of questions rolling in. I actually have a couple questions myself, which I think people will really appreciate. So I might trickle one or two of those in, but I definitely want to get to the attendees first.
Okay.
So I'm going to read these kind of as they are. All these questions are normally paragraph questions because they're very personal to people. So, bear with me as I read these and I'll try to get through them. We have a couple of situations lately where two separate businesses really wanted to do some advertising campaigns with us, but their marketing and advertising agency, same for both of them, convinced them not to do business with us. How should I handle this? And let's take this a little bit broader, right? Sometimes people badmouth you. Sometimes people will say you're not a good agency when they know you're competitive to them. Maybe you've mentioned that oh, well, I've been looking at a couple proposals. Oh, who else are you looking at? Oh, this company's really bad. And now you're having a conversation or a situation where there's some kind of negative comment about you have to overcome. How do
Yeah.
you deal with that?
Whew, that's a hard one. And I don't know that there's much to do other than in that specific situation, other than give that company your best, show them that you can do what you say you can do. And if they want to believe what this other agency is saying, then there's not much you can do about that. I will say to brands, you do not want to hire an agency that talks bad about other agencies. There's no reason for that, and really it has nothing to do with you. You want to hire an agency that is going to do the best work for you, and that's really all that should be on the table at that point. So I think my advice would be do the best that you can to show them the value that you're going to provide, and then if it doesn't work out, move on. And it's not going to be the end of your agency as long as you are focused on producing great work and getting fantastic results for clients. Eventually, that will overpower any other agency's ability to say things about you. Is just, I guess, shut them up with good work would be my answer.
So I have a question that's further down here, but I think it might actually come into an add-on to this, and that's, should you offer something like a performance trial or an ability to kind of prove your worth, or, an ability to prove your work, not your worth, but, also your work to this company? Do you find that starting to go down that path would be worthwhile, or do you think, and expand that onto how do you feel about work for performance at all, like not only just in this case of trying to prove yourself, but in general?
Yeah. I think agencies should be as closely tied to revenue as possible, and I'm a fan of performance-based contracts. I mean, I kind of outlined that in the presentation where you should have kind of a main KPI that's as closely tied to revenue as possible. And then part of the payment structure is that there's a percentage, either that the company will be refunded if you are short on the goal, and that holds you accountable, or a percentage that perhaps is bonused if you exceed the goal. And I would recommend capping that on both sides to prevent harm on either side. But yeah, I'm a big fan of performance-based. I think sometimes agencies are really hungry, really hungry, and that causes them sometimes to make decisions that are not going to be best for them in the long term. So I think you need to have as your guiding principle what is going to provide the most value for this client, and accepting work that does not help you do the work that you need to do. I should say, accepting compensation that does not help you do the work that you need to do is not in the best interest of the client. And so you may feel like you're doing them a favor by doing something way cheaper than it actually costs you, but it's actually hurting them because it may get them in the door, but that's not going to be a long-term partnership that they want or that you want. So I think have as your guiding principle what is going to provide the maximum benefit to my clients, and structure your contracts and your company and your marketing around that.
Beautiful. We got a lot more questions rolling in, so I'll just keep
Okay.
rolling with them. Sometimes we deal with the biz dev guy, the sales guy, and they're really great, right? They end up being, super, excited, and they're going to do all kinds of things for us. They're going to work hard for us. But then we actually get the team members that we're supposed to actually work with, and they're not as motivated. Sometimes they're fresh out of college. They, just don't seem to have that same polish that some of the execs might have had in selling me on this project. How do I deal with that? How do I avoid that gap?
I think it goes back to another point that I made, which is ask who you're going to be working with. And in some cases, it depends on, I guess, how big your plans are, but you can ask to meet who you're going to be working with, and you can interview them beforehand. We do that all the time. Clients will want to know, like, who is going to be the person in charge of my account? Who will be the person actually doing the SEO or the advertising or the content or the CRO on my team? I want to meet them. That's perfectly acceptable to ask. So that's what I would do to prevent that from happening. And then, who's coming up with the strategy? Is it the salesperson coming up with all the strategy? I mean, because that could be great, but they're coming up with a strategy that the agency can't actually execute on. Or is it somebody who is ultimately responsible for fulfilling on that strategy? Are they the person who's coming up with strategy for sales? So that I would also try to dive into and see, like, who's going to be ultimately accountable to make sure that this is a success. I want to meet them. I want to talk with them to hear their insight. So asking for more information, I think, is a great way to circumnavigate that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Honestly, that really is. I mean, just simply asking is a great point. What do you think about the demand of a lot of agencies with 6-month or 1-year contracts?
I guess, do they have more information on that question?
No, but I mean, my guess is that, like, because I deal with this and I see this a lot. I mean, when you talk to people, they're like, okay, well, we have a minimum 6-month engagement that we work
Mhm.
with. So,
Mhm.
it's $10,000 a month, but it's not just $10,000. Let's see how it goes. And if it goes well, we'll do another $10,000. And in some of that case, I can understand it takes a bit to build up and get going. But some people use time periods, other people use timelines, right? They say the first month's really a setup and research, the second, so that you're paying for setup and not
Right.
results until you get to a certain point. But what do you think about it when they demand like a 6 or a year contract? Is that fair? Is that something that is common in your in your position?
So yeah, I think it's somewhat common. I think it's fair when the agency is doing it because it's in the best interest of the client. I think an agency should be flexible. And if a client wants different terms, the agency should be willing to be flexible with that. However, one factor in this equation is when are resources being invested and at what rate? When we have a 6-month contract, what we typically do is we will front load resources and investment to where if the client walked away after 1 month, we would lose a great deal on that because we've invested more than what they're paying on a monthly rate, with the idea being that front load of investment is going to cause much bigger payoffs in month 4, 5, and 6. So that should be actually a benefit to the client, provided the agency is actually making that front-loaded investment. If they are only providing, if it's $10,000 a month and they require a 6-month contract and they're only providing $10,000 a month of service every month, that's not a good deal for brands. And frankly, I would push for just month to month or something like that.
And
Uh,
if I could, oh, sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say if I can add a comment because I've been doing these contracts for 17 years too, and to be honest, like I've never held anybody if they're surely unhappy, like if they're like we are absolutely unhappy, then I let them go
Yeah,
every single time. I mean, you should never have somebody who's really got you to the flames saying no, you're on the hook for 9 more months of unsatisfactory work with us regardless of what you like. And so you could, I would suggest you could even have a 30-day out clause like in the
hmm,
agreement. It's like if you get notification of 30 days out that, hey, look, we're not happy with this, then that gives the company an opportunity to say, well, what is it that you're not happy with? You want to see more traffic? You want to see better rankings? Like it gives them an opportunity to kind of earn themselves out in that 30-day notice or be cut off. I think that's typically pretty fair, but a good
yeah,
agency doesn't want an unhappy client around. I mean, it's
right.
just not fun. It sucks.
Yeah, yeah. They're not going to hold your feet to the fire if they aren't doing good work. Like I'd be shocked. I mean, I'm sure there's probably agencies that do that, but a good agency will not force you to continue paying for results and for work that is just not good.
And I mean, if I'm being honest, in the last 12 years, I haven't done contracts. I don't
Mm,
even do a contract. I mean, you work with me, I'll do the scope and I'll give you the scope so we agree on the scope, but I'm just going to invoice. And at any point we're unhappy, I'm just going to, close the invoice and we'll call it a day, I mean, because
yeah,
I'm confident enough, in the work, right? But that's
sure.
expectation too. Like you really need to understand what's going into it. So great question, honestly, because that's something that really deters a lot of people from going into the engagement. Just remember that the agencies as well are nervous about that. They're also thinking, sometimes, man, I'm going to have to do 12 months and they might not sign. And so, it's a stress point on both sides. So work with your agency,
Yeah,
figure it out.
yeah,
I understand that ad fraud is claiming as much as 30% of ad spends these days, and various fraudsters access an ad as it is sold from an ad network to partners to networks. So it's really hard to know where a lot of the tracking of that ad is because it's resold so many times.
hmm,
Is what I'm taking away from this. And so I guess what they're asking for. What funds available for an advertising campaign? And this might be a separate question or the same question looped in, but it seems similar, just the way that it came through. As a
yeah,
small advertiser, okay, so my guess is with the ad fraud claiming as much as 30%, they want to know, like, I'm guessing they want to know, is there any way to kind of check in on that? Is there a way to have that discussion with the agency? Is there a way of
yeah,
kind of identifying who bears, let's just assume a couple questions here, that they assume, who's to assume the risk on that? Is it split between the agencies, or is it on the the client to just pay for that click fraud? Is it an agency's requirement to kind of reduce that click fraud through some sort of system that they use?
yeah.
What are some of the different points that you can kind of speak to around this?
Yeah, I think it's going to be unique to your culture or sorry, your company and the agency you're working with. In my opinion, I think it's the agency's job to reduce click fraud as much as possible and to be open and actively reporting on any data they have around that. One, this is a side point, but one thing I see agencies do that you should run from, you should own everything the agency is doing. Any account they set up is yours. Anything they create is yours. If they're creating your ad account in their account, I would not. I would watch out for that, mainly because like we've had situations where whole campaigns were set up, the company broke ties with the agency, and the agency locked everything down, and they had to build everything from scratch. Um, so as much as you own all your data, and there's nothing you shouldn't be asking or feel free to ask your agency for. So going back to click fraud, if that's something that is plaguing you or you're concerned about, that's something you can ask your agency to look into, to reduce, to report on. So as far as who should own that, I don't know. My inclination would be yeah, I don't know. I mean, it just depends on your organization, the setup you have with your agency, who owns that.
And I would reiterate that a million times that, you really should kind of have that relationship with them to be able to like inquire and talk about it, and that you should own everything. Like, oh my God, like I don't know how many times,
Yeah,
I've seen people lose everything, and people hold it hostage because they just don't own it. And they'll say stuff like there's a lot of excuses, but literally at this point, there is no excuse for you not being able to own it. If an agency's like, well, we can't do that because it's tied, that's all BS. Like you can
yeah,
own it all with today's setup. So don't let anybody talk you into it
yeah.
thinking that, oh, well, that's just the way it's set up. Nope, that's not the
Mhm.
way it's set up.
Right.
Next question. This is, the next question I started to read, but as a small advertiser, what percentage of my funds should I leave available for an ad campaign? Um, Available for an ad campaign should I expect to go to the marketing agency? What percentage of my funds that I have available for an ad campaign should I give to a marketing
Mhm.
agency?
Mhm.
Versus, I'm guessing that they're talking about all marketing aspects, right? Like they're going to do a bunch of different work, maybe some things they want to do on their own. As a small advertiser, what percentage of the funds should I make
Yeah,
available to the agency?
yeah. Yeah, I would also assume that they're talking about like I have this amount set aside for ads. How much should I expect the agency to take to manage and create those ads versus actually spending on the platforms that I'm advertising on?
Oh,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. How much of the percentage is a fee association, right?
yeah, I I don't know that I have a good answer for that, other than I mean, the main question, the reason is because there's so many variables that go into that. If you have a single product, a single market, and it's fairly specific, and you're running it on one ad platform, then the amount that that agency will need to manage that is minimal. But if you're talking like it's a complex product offering, if you're changing your product, like if you have the kind of product where we sell 100 of these and then they're gone, and then we have 100 of something else, they're going to have to be changing their ad sets regularly. And if you're running that on 3 different platforms, then the resources needed to run something like that is crazy, agnostic of the amount that you're spending in ads. So there's a lot of variables that go into that question. So I don't have a good answer other than talk to the agency, describe to them what you're expecting them to run, but then be realistic with yourself about like what is going to be needed to run this. If you got a really simple setup, one platform, and they're demanding 15% of your ad spend, like that's probably too much to run something super simple. But so I don't know, it
It
changes. And
also
if you're
depends
spending hundreds
on,
of thousands, percentage is probably not exactly the best way to do it. If they're doing 10% of a million ad spend, like that's probably ludicrous for what they need
yeah.
to manage that. So there's too many variables, I think.
Yeah, especially, and you talked about the higher end, but on the bottom end, if you're like, I've got $300 to spend on
Right.
ads and I want to give
Right.
you 10% of that, and somebody's gonna spend 10 hours creating ads for $300 in their pocket, without any other expenses, you can realize that they might have, and that's why a lot of companies will have a base price, like it's $1,000 to manage this account if it's a small budget, and then I get 10% of the ad budget up to this amount, and then
Yeah.
so you can also scale it, right? So just working that out with your agency, again, you're going to find a common thread here. If you have a good agency, all of these things should be open to discussion and work out.
Yeah, and honestly, I love advertising. We offer advertising, but if you only have like $1,000 to set aside for ads, I would probably not do ads. I would probably do some other things that would have potentially a bigger impact on the growth of your business at that stage. So
Yeah, I don't know how many times I tell people with that budget, in a local business, you'd be better off at Kinko's and standing outside Publix
mm,
handing out some
yeah,
flyers,
yeah,
or working on, getting to your chamber of commerce and start going to some, meetings and like meet some local businesses to get referrals, because, it's going to go a lot further. So I think that's a good point. Um, Next question. Yeah, this is an interesting question. And it's one of the questions I wanted to ask you. This is an impossible question to answer, but I think we need to
awesome.
talk about it a little bit.
Okay,
How much do I need to spend with an agency to get results? And that's a tough one, but I think it's everyone's, question. It's in the top
yeah,
10 questions for every single person.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't answer that directly, but I'll do my best. Is like when you're talking to the agency that you're trying to vet and you want to know how much you need to spend, the way to arrive at that, in my opinion, the best, most logical way to arrive at that answer is to say, what are your goals? You need to know, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? What are the numbers for those goals? And then where have you been? If you provide that to a good agency in the vetting process, the agency should come back to you and say, okay, we've looked over all your data, we've looked over your site, we looked over your social, everything that you're doing, all your ads. And we think if we do, based on our experience, if we do X, Y, and Z things to this degree, that we will be able to get you to hit your goal or exceed your goal or whatever, right? And then we can reverse engineer. Okay, well, in order for us to do X, Y, and Z things, we're going to need these resources to do that. And maybe they come back and that's way more than you were willing to spend. So then you can say, okay, that's too much. Then the agency can say, okay, great. Well, if we're looking to cut back to a specific amount, then I would recommend maybe that we cut back on Y to this degree. I think that's going to provide the maximum return. It might not get us to the goal that you've outlined, but if I owned your business, I would still, this is what I would do, and within the budget that you've provided. So it should be a back and forth, and the agency should be able to say what it is they're going to do for that spend and why that is going to get you to where you want to go. If they're just saying, you know, our fee is just you know, 10 grand, and that's just what it is. And they're just like, you know, we're gonna just do some SEO, we're gonna do some ads, and that's what we're gonna do. Like, that's not enough. They need to say, like, you know, we're gonna target these kinds of people, and we're gonna optimize these pages. We found these weak spots, and we think if we lift them, we can get this percentage of increase. And with your conversion rate, if we can tweak that, bump it up a little bit, with that increase of traffic, we can get this many conversions for you, and that's gonna create the return on your investment that you're looking for. That's the level of detail you should be looking for as you vet an agency, and that will show you whether or not the agency knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, and any good agency has gone through. They've looked at their staffing, their costs, their expenses, the time it takes, what their setup is. They know what that hourly cost is for them and what their profit margins they're shooting for are. So it should be something that at least they know. And so I agree, that's a really good point. This is something I think is an interesting thing. It's been around for many, many years, but awards, people go out and do the marketing awards, right? We just won the best marketing campaign for the year award, or we've got AdWords certification, and we've got, you know, these different certifications that you can go out and get. How important are these type of accolades in the process of selecting a quality agency?
Not at all. Zero. Zero important. They're important, like, they're important because people care about them. Are they important because they actually indicate who is good and who is not? No. Like, most awards is really just a pay to play game. The vast majority. There are some awards that are like legitimate, but you want an agency focused on doing great work. So be looking at their case studies, talk to their clients, look for people that you know in your circles that have worked with that agency before and ask their opinion. That is 100 times more important than any award or any certification. So if you're asking me my true opinion, if I was hiring an agency, I would pay zero attention to that. That
Yeah.
would not influence
And
me at all.
I'm actually a judge for most of
Oh,
these awards and stuff. And so what
sorry.
I will say is, no, no, that's fine. That's fine. I just volunteer because I actually like to do it, right? And so I actually spend a lot of time looking at it, thinking about how the skills are used and stuff. And I won't go into that whole thing, but the other side of that is, even if it's not a pay to play, a lot of times you're talking about 3 to 4 submissions. And so
Yeah.
when you're winning this award, I've actually seen categories that have 1 submission. Like,
Mhm.
so who's the winner? Well, the 1 submission.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be pay to play always, just to necessarily not have a very impactful meaning, right? So I think it's more of an internal company thing, as you mentioned. Good points there. We're looking to switch agencies. Um, what do you have as tips to make the transition as smooth as possible?
Um, be upfront with your agency about what you're unhappy with. I think be upfront with them about making that transition. Um, I would. It's not akin, or it's not too different to letting somebody go. You know, you want that relationship to be good as much as possible, but you need to be firm and clear about what it is you're expecting and why they're not meeting that, and then move on. As you transfer that new agency, it's important that that new agency understand what the other agency did and what was working and what was not working. I think giving their monthly reports or however frequent, whatever the cadence of the reports are to the new agency can be helpful in that, so you can get that context. I think sometimes as people switch to a new agency, they don't want anything from the old that was frustrating to them to transfer into the new. But I think the more context and information you can provide, the better. Yeah, just make sure that you have all your data, that you have all your assets. You understand that you own everything and you have access to all of that, so that when the other agency leaves, all of that information goes with you. You may not need it, but you don't want to be caught in a position where you need it and then they're refusing to give it to you because they're sour that you've left. And no self-respecting agency should do that, but if you find yourself with that kind of agency, make sure that you have everything you need as you make that departure. And then, yeah, just be super clear with the new agency and do your best to avoid the pitfalls that led to that first relationship not working.
What do you think about when agencies ask to have, can you share any previous like SEO audits? Can you share previous reports and stuff like
Yeah.
that? I mean, I can understand a bit why the agency wants to see some of that in some cases, but people are always like, well, what, they're just going to take that work and then use it as their own and charge me for it? Like, there's a lot of concerns that some people don't want to share their private data. How normal is it, and what are your thoughts on people sharing this type of material from previous agencies or previous consultants or previous contractors with their new agency?
I mean, I think, again, treat your agency like you would an internal hire as much as you possibly can. You're not going to hire somebody, have them sit down next to you, and then when they ask for information, you're going to say, no, I'm not going to tell you that because I don't trust you. That's not going to create a healthy relationship. Again, like, a good agency is not going to do anything bad with that. All they're going to do is help you. And honestly, the majority of it is probably going to be just useless. So if you don't want to give it to them, I think that's totally fine. If they're not asking for it, I don't know that I would go out of my way to give it to them. But any information that you can give them on context about what went wrong, what you are unhappy with, and in your opinion, what the other agency did that caused that break in the relationship, the higher the chance that this new relationship is going to work. But I think the wrong thing to do is set out on this new relationship with this attitude of distrust and protection. Although you obviously want to protect yourself, but I think you should have already done at this point, by the time you're hiring them, the vetting to trust this agency. So then I would say trust them.
Awesome. So this is an interesting question, and it's kind of unique, not overall, but I'm going to broaden the question out a little bit.
Okay.
If you're working based on some sort of revenue share or bonus or some aspects, for instance, you're working for a law firm and they don't want to tell you, or they can't tell you what the amount of the settlements were or the verdicts. So let's say they just don't want to. How do you attach value to their revenue if they won't share the numbers with you?
Right. So those kinds of contracts that are performance based, the goal is to get as close to revenue as possible. So if they can't share revenue with you, then revenue cannot be the KPI. It has to be a metric that everyone can see and has access to, for it to be successful in this format. So, I often think about KPIs or metrics of having this kind of evolution, the ultimate being profit, really. So one step back from profit would be revenue. One step back from revenue perhaps would be leads. Back from that is going to be visits to my conversion page or something. I mean, leads, typically we don't need to go further back from that. That's typically something that everyone has access to and can see. So you're really just trying to, the last thing you want is to have a contract based off of social media likes or something like useless like that. But you're trying to push that as close as you can to revenue. And as soon as you reach that point where either you, the client, are not feeling comfortable sharing that information, or they don't have enough of an impact on this metric, that's typically where you should stop and create a contract based off of that KPI. So get as close
You
as you
can
can to
also
revenue.
Yeah, and you can tell yourself, like if you're getting X amount of dollars and your effort costs X amount of dollars and everybody's happy, even though you don't know what those numbers are, you can always make that judgment call on your side if your profitability is good enough, right? You might not know exactly where some of those numbers are, but I mean, I only say this because sometimes you smaller businesses out there, these smaller agencies, they just can't afford to not, take business if they can get it, and so in those scenarios, you have to just judgment call it out. But I agree. I mean, it's crazy when people won't share numbers. That's just a red flag, crazy red flag. Um, Let me see another one. So we talk a lot about, and this may have to be the last question, just depending on how long it takes to answer this, but it's a broader question. We talk a lot about evaluating agencies through kind of very in front of you kind of metrics, right? You have the conversation, you have like some, referrals from customers, but let's say you don't feel confident that you can trust all of that. Almost all referrals are going to be people that will talk good about them, and nobody posts their failures, so sometimes it can be hard to kind of figure out if the agency is really as good as they say they are. Do you have any recommendations for researching an agency where I'm not talking to them? What are some of the things that I could look for, or some of the things that I could see that would say this agency knows what they're doing before ever having talked to them?
Yeah. You're looking for recommendations. Are they recommended by companies that you trust? Are they recommended by people that you trust? Perhaps these are people that you know personally, and so you trust their opinion. Are there people that you identify as leaders in the industry and they've given their endorsement? Um, and that's if I had to fire or if I had to hire an agency right now, I would start off by finding all the people that I trust most and I trust their opinion. I've seen their work, and I'd say, who have you worked with? And I would take that endorsement. I would weigh that a lot in finding my agency. I would not necessarily go off of websites. Alone. I think case studies can be a big factor in judging whether or not an agency has their chops. And then I would maybe reach out to some of those companies that they have case studies of to see like how did that go? What was your opinion? And if you want to do that due diligence without talking to the agency, that's what I would do is referrals.
And a nice little trick for you, if you want to see if you know people that are connected, you can go to LinkedIn and put in a company account, and you can see like some of the top officials or the people who you might be talking to at the company, and look at your second or first connections that are
Good point.
shared. And you can go find some people that way. So there's always a way to find some people that are connected, and to find that information out. So you just have to do that due diligence. You know, we have a couple more questions here. I'm going to see if I can maybe. You mentioned 5 years for an agency is a good metric for them. What about the agencies that are up and coming and their ability to kind of maybe need you more, do more work for you, be a little more focused on you because
Yeah.
they're, so what would you, let's say you are going for under 5 year agencies, are there things that you would put as qualifiers that say under 5 years is fine, but check these things?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not a bad strategy to try to be a big fish in a little pond. Be like maybe you're not a big company, but to this agency, you're their biggest client, so you're going to focus a lot on you. I don't think that's a bad thing. Um, I do think there's some danger in hunger when hunger becomes too powerful for an agency. And if an agency is so hungry, if they're going to go out of business unless they can land this next account, they're going to start saying things and
Hmm.
presenting themselves in a way that's not true. So they're going to take an approach of just like, let's say we can do it and we'll figure it out later. You're in more danger of that. So I think trying to vet out, if they're being straight up with you about their capabilities, or if they're trying to stretch here to land a big client, any questions you have around that to suss that out would be key. Um,
And I've even seen that. I've even seen that sometimes with failing agencies. If you have a big
Mm.
agency who's starting to fail, or they kind of, there was this one big agency that kind of happened a while back, and they ended up, I had insight into this business's operations and whatnot. They ended up promising everything under the wind and had no possible way to deliver on it, and
Mhm.
ended up having to, close down even. So you definitely, you have to weigh those, risk versus reward kind of scenarios. Um,
Yeah.
we're out of time. I mean, we basically got through the majority of the questions. There's a couple in here that we'll send over to you. They were kind of more off topic. So
Okay.
if you asked questions and I didn't get to them, we try to stay focused to the kind of agency, and some of you are asking how to build a company, and so from scratch in a different area. So some of those questions I'll send over to Paxton still, and we'll see if we can get some answers for the recap post. But we're out of time today for the questions. I want to thank everybody. There was a lot of really good questions in there. I want to thank you, Paxton. It's always hard in my mind to think of people kind of giving up their secrets, right, and really kind of opening up their secret, actions and their processes. And obviously, you guys have a really good setup that allows you to kind of really retain your clients and do really good business. You guys have been around, hell, like as long as I can remember, and I've been in the industry 17 years. So you guys have been around, so obviously it's working for you. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to really share that, because I think a lot of the things you're talking about are things that agencies and both people that are hiring agencies really need to kind of understand and kind of hone in on. So I think this is
Yeah.
really good for the industry. And I think this is really good for everybody who attended. So I appreciate your time today, and thank everybody for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. I mean, our company mission is to elevate people and brands we believe in, and that doesn't just mean the people and brands that we work with directly. So anything I can do to help the industry is definitely part of our mission and reason for existing.
Well, you accomplished that today. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.